Well, Madonna fans are confronting the extremely sad news that Christopher Ciccone, Madonna's brother and collaborator, has died today. He was 63 and had been battling illness. His friend Maison Empire is with me. G'day, Mason.
Hello, how are you?
Look, my condolences to you, my friend.
Thank you. Yeah.
How did you know Chris?
I met him at a nightclub. I used to be a club promoter in Los Angeles, and basically, the premise of it was just like like a club MTV situation where instead of DJing, they would play music videos
Oh,
of pop singers like Madonna, and Kylie Minogue and Britney Spears, and
listeners, I don't know if you're getting the same vibe here from Mason, but where is this place? I'm going there now. It's amazing.
oh, for the longest time, it was at this nightclub called Avalon Hollywood. It was formerly the theater was called the Hollywood Palace, and they used to do a lot of TV shows there back in the '60s. It's right at the corner of Hollywood and Vine, and that kind of leads me back to Chris, because Chris used to live in an apartment building at the corner of Hollywood and Fairfax. Chris was a member of the community, and he would, come to these nights. And we met one night, and a friend of his was also a promoter, and we just, we got, hung out and became, fast friends. I was also a recording artist and a DJ, and I was making music at the time. And we would, collaborate on shows. And he did this one Halloween show for me, and he was my director. And that's how our initial friendship started, basically. And because I knew he was, a very talented person, and he had, worked in the music industry before and directed shows for his sister. I
Mhm.
invited him and hired him to do a Halloween event for us, and basically went into rehearsals. And he had a concept. He loved this Spanish matador concept, which is really funny because I think that your listeners would really appreciate this. This was like 2010, and basically it's like Chris had this idea of, okay, let's do a Day of the Dead theme for your show. And what was great about it was like the year that we did it, the following year, because we were in Hollywood and we're such an influential uh, part of that, culture, the pop culture in Los Angeles. It's like you would see this influence kind of permeate through larger artists. Like, I believe Lady Gaga, that following year, she did the Grammys in like 2011, and her aesthetic was the exact same kind of aesthetic that we did, where we dressed up like in skeletons. It was the year that her Born This Way album came out, and she
Mm.
did a performance of Marry the Night. And if you play my video for Ghosts and Stuff next to her video for Marry the Night on the Grammys, it's like, it's really close. It's like almost
Wow.
inspired by, and it's like an amazing thing. And then later on, in his own sister was for like, what's the song that she did off of Rebel Heart, that first single, that's
Living for
um,
love.
Living for Love. So the Matadors with, dancing around her with the horns and everything.
And interesting though, Mason, not the first time Matador had come up as part of Chris and Madonna's theme back in bedtime story days, of course. Take a Bow, I believe it was, and
Yeah, yeah. If you when you went into Chris's house or his apartment on Hollywood, he had Matador paintings. Like you had a painting of a Matador fighting a bull, and he would show me. Oh, he had tons of books. That's the other thing. He had lots of photography books, a lot of. He had encyclopedias. I mean, that's a funny story too. I mean, I think the first time I went over to his house, I walked in and I was like, I thought it was a library, and it was, it was just a flat, basically, apartment on Hollywood, but it was covered in books. Like you would, there were books on top of books on top of books. And so, and it's like, and he had these encyclopedias, and I was like, there's Google. It's like, you don't need these encyclopedias anymore. You want to make some room because there's just so many books. And he was like, okay. And so we would take his like books, and I was like, are we, you can't donate them to a library, but we recycled his encyclopedias, and they were like, from the 50s or something. But he had
Oh,
a
that
lot of,
would have broke his heart because what I've been told about Chris, and obviously I'm keen to know from your perspective what he was like as a person. But
uh-huh.
what I've been told is that he oozed creativity from every fiber of his being. He was always looking at the world through a creative lens. So those books that you're talking about, I'm sure that that was a part of his genius, making
Yeah.
himself aware of the past, of history, of other influences.
Well, I agree, and I mean it was his idea to recycle them, so it was kind of like, and I was just the muscle to help him and get it from
Yeah.
from his apartment to the recycling bin. But I mean, I think she's definitely, they weren't missed because there he had a ton of books. It was just like books on top of books, but
Mm.
full of stuff. And it's like if you had an idea, you mentioned something, he could, he would remember where he saw something and build on that. And he would like, just turn around and pull a book and say, "What do you think about this?" And let me tell you, as like a director for a stage, performance, even if it's just one song, it's like he was very committed, and he was there for all the rehearsals. He would, make sure that I didn't blow my voice. He filmed it. It's like he had, he would pull his resources, you know, um, to go above and beyond to make sure that the piece of art that he was making was, documented. And I
But
I
he was
do.
across every detail, right? He was across every detail.
Oh yeah, from the costumes to the way we moved, the way we danced,
Yeah.
and the rehearsal, who we were, who I got to do the choreography. It was, all those. But not only that, but it's like he would capture, those moments, and he would take those moments and turn it into art. Have you ever seen his paintings? How they're kind of like, they're surrealist in a
They've
way.
got a very distinct style. Very
Right.
distinct. You can probably tell a Chris Ciccone piece of art by looking at it. I would suggest
It's very like surreal, and an impression. It's like, it's not like, um
it's not
it's
literal.
almost like, yeah, it's not literal. It's like silhouettes, but it gets it captures the energy I feel when you meet a person and you're looking at them, like the sparks and the color that pops off of them. And he would put that in. So I had this skull, and he painted it purple, and he put all this color on it, and he made this like, you know basically Halloween prop, or decoration, look like something, you know beautiful and important. And he gave it like life. But at the same time, it's like he's doing that, things are also going in your head. And I'm sitting on his couch, and he's like sketching me. He's like getting ideas to do a painting, and I'm like sitting there just kind of just listening, because I'm in awe. And as I'm sure anybody that followed pop music and Madonna, of that era of the 80s and the 90s, these people. They don't know you, but you know them, and you're kind of like walking this tight line or tightrope of, I don't want to like geek out and be like a total fan, because it's
Yeah.
like you don't want to like scare them off. And that's the whole thing about, like, when I was working with him, I was very careful not to bring up, his sister, and allow him to bring her up, and then we would have a discussion about it. But so I'm sitting there on his couch. He's like, taking pictures, kind of, making mental notes, taking notes, and just kind of just soaking in the whole entire experience, more so than I would expect. It was just a really amazing time. And
Yeah.
I feel like, the times in his apartment, just, I mean, he basically let me like run around his apartment like a kid in a candy store. I tried on his his Blonde Ambition tour jacket. You know the one I'm talking about that has like
Sure do.
the M and the castle in the background, and he also had the helmet that it's kind of like it almost looks like a German like World War II helmet where it has a spike on the top of it, but instead of like a spike, it has that big plume that kind of, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
that what he had that in his closet, and he pulled it out. I was like, try this on, and I was like, oh my god, and I'm like, I know exactly what it is, and I know exactly where it's from, but I'm not like letting on. I'm like, oh, that's cool, trying to play cool, but he could tell that I knew exactly where it was and where it was
An
coming from.
apartment full of memorabilia, and you're trying not to geek out. You're trying to be cool. You're trying to be cool, right?
Oh yeah, and yeah, you're trying not to like go, oh, I know all, I mean, how weird does that have to be for somebody to like, a total stranger going into your home and you're like, you see family portraits on the wall and you're kind of like, they're telling you, oh, this is my sister, this is my brother, this is my father, this is my late mother. And you're like, oh,
Mm.
okay. Yeah, I have no idea. I have exactly know exactly who all these people are. And it's because you're famous.
Hi, this isn't Kylie Minogue, and I love listening to Time to Talk.
How long did you know him for, Mason?
Oh, I met him in 2009, and the last time I spoke to him was about a year ago, and he told me that he was sick. And so I guess that would be like about 13, 14 years now. And to the day, because I met him around the end of a summer of 2009. So yeah, so about 14 years.
When he spoke to you that last time and shared with you that he was sick, what was his outlook on life at that stage? Was it did he know that he had a terminal illness? For example, was he ready to do battle with cancer?
Well, first off, I mean, if you never spoken to Chris, the first thing you notice about him is his voice is very, very deep. It's so booming. It's like you're listening to it and it almost kind of shocks you how deep his voice is. It's a definitely bass voice. So when you're talking to him, you're kind of like almost like, yes, sir.
Mm.
It's kind of like you're not you find it difficult to like giggle and laugh and carry on like we're doing right now. It's just he had this voice that was so deep, and when he spoke, um, you could just tell he was taking a drag off of his cigarette, and the smoke was coming off of his out of his breath. I, for me, it was like I always allowed, I kept my questions and I let him like tell me what he wanted to say, and for him to tell me that he was sick, it was kind of like it was one of those other things. It's kind of like uh, you acknowledge it and you kind of move on because you want to, want to live and you want to like, focus on the positive. But him telling me that, I mean, it's uncomfortable. It really is because you're like, and you try to like edit those like uncomfortable bits out, and you're just kind of happy to talk to your friend, that you haven't spoken to in a while.
Mm.
But yeah, he sounded like he was going to like you know how do you talk to somebody, or how do you it makes you feel like your own mortality in a way whenever you start talking about things like that. You're kind of
Yeah,
like, how were we supposed to know that when we first met you were only going to live for another 14 years? I mean, I felt this. And it's kind of funny because it's like I've kind of had the privilege of being around really like famous musicians my whole entire life. I mean, I lived in Minneapolis and for before I moved to Hollywood, and I used to write music with Prince's band, the New Power Generation, and we would go to Paisley Park, and Prince would come in and have a discussion with us, and show. I remember going to a birthday party, a Prince birthday party at Paisley Park, and him pulling up in a Viper, and it was like, and I was like, oh, I'm sitting on a speaker and I'm looking at him going, oh, that's a cool, you know, purple hot rod. And he was like, it's eggplant. you know, it's stuff like that. But looking at him, thinking the same thing in my mind, it's like, I mean, I met Prince when I was like, I think 20 years old. And from that, when he passed away a couple years ago, I thought to myself, oh, how are you supposed to know that you only had 18 more years of your life to like do things in? And that's what I think about, not to get on it is a somber note, but you really start to think about, how much time you have left and what you're doing with your life so that you can really make the most of it.
Is there a way you can help us understand what Chris was like as a person? I, as a fan, know him from afar through the documentaries, certainly through his book that he wrote about his sister, the interviews that he's done. So I feel like I know him, but of course I probably don't. It certainly seems to me like he didn't have a mean bone in his body. He seemed like quite a gentle soul. What's your experience of Chris? What was he like?
Oh, well, I got two really good stories to say, and I'll try to make them brief. But first off, I did meet him whenever he released his book, and the core of my friendship and interaction with Chris was those years of him not really talking to his sister, and we didn't really mention it, but he was very proud of the book, and he asked me if I had read it, and of course I was like, no, I haven't read it, but I will. And the thing I don't think a lot of Madonna fans realize about that book is that, well, because he was my friend, I was like, well, I'm going to read it. And I kind of grew up with Madonna and her music and admiring her. Same thing, I'm like an 80s kid at heart. Prince, Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, those were my favorite. But he asked me to read the book, and, I'm not a big reader. So a lot of people don't know this, but you can download his book, My Life with My Sister,
An
and
audio version, right?
he's reading it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so you're listening to his voice telling the story, and basically, it's it's not about her. It's basically Chris. It's about Chris's life, and Madonna kind of like moves through it. For me, it reads a lot like the Bible, because the God is never really in the Bible, but everybody's talking about him. Or I guess in a weird way. It's like, for me, like, we did talk about, how would you make this? After I listened to the book, I was like, how would you make this? Would make a great movie, because you would never actually see Madonna. You would just see Chris and his life and her moving through it, and how it kind of just like everything had to stop when he
Mm.
had to work with his sister. He really just stopped his own life, his own relationships, to work with her and put his all into that. And then when that tour was over, or that era was over, he would get thrown back into trying to be a regular person. And that's how basically Chris was. He was basically, it felt like he was on hold waiting for her to do the next thing. And then one day that stopped. And that's exactly where I met him, at that point in his life, where the tour stopped. She got another director who was also a really good friend of mine, and he's a great guy.
Did he regret
Um,
writing the book?
no, but like I said, it's like he didn't see it like other people saw it. He saw it as his book, about his life. And it really, for me, talking to him about it and then listening to it, I can get that point of view. And like I said, if they made a movie about it, Madonna wouldn't really be in it. It would be her moving through the room, or you'd see pictures of her on TV or something, and it would be his life, and the phone would ring, and it'd be her, and then he would have to leave. It's like, that's how
Yeah.
it reads to me. When she gets famous, I mean, when they're talking about when they were young kids, it's different, but still, I feel like there's the Madonna, his sister, and then there's a Madonna who's a star, and it's two different people,
Yeah.
and
He,
it's
he
hard to do that. Go ahead.
the book definitely drove a wedge, and there was estrangement between Chris and his sister. Did he ever talk to you about that estrangement? Did he talk about missing his sister?
Well, yeah, and well, here's the deal. It's like, I don't, again, once and I never achieved fame like real famous people did, but I was pretty known in my in my scene, you know? They might have not known my name, but they knew what I did and who I was, and I was a part of that scene. I feel like, going back to my friend Cynthia that took me to Kabbalah, she was a famous photographer, and, Chris is a famous, musical director for concerts. Once you lose that, that's the, you achieve that, and that's how the level of how you want to work and how you want to live your life. It's very difficult to go back to working at, like, you know Starbucks or something. Do you get what I'm saying? It's like, not there's nothing wrong with working at Starbucks or working an everyday job. It's like, the problem is that, you've achieved this, and it's hard for you to go back to being, a regular citizen, or, a civilian, once you've reached, and worked with really famous people. And I kind of feel that's how Chris felt. It's like he had achieved this immense success, and I'm telling you, whenever you work with him, it's like, all due respect to Madonna and the people that Chris has worked with, but he really flushes out that idea. If you have a concept and you like, I have this song, what are your ideas? Um, and he puts it in there. He's like, what do you do this? What if you look like this? What if you, move this way? Or what if, the lighting's like this? It's like, he really knows his stagecraft. So a lot of that success and those images that are really ingrained in our minds in pop culture do come from Chris's mind, and it's kind of like, you can see that in his artwork, and you can see that in everything that he ever produced. Chris had his moments where he, not that he would kill himself, but where he let vices get a hold of him. Like, we used to drink, and we would, like, have and have a good time, but um, it always felt like he was waiting for her to come back, in a way.
Did
But
he
on
say that?
no, you just felt it. But his personality, you were asking me how, just a kind person. Around, I think, like around 2012 going into 2013, I was in a relationship, and that ended, and ended badly, and I was pretty much homeless, and I had to go back to my family, and it was in a relationship I was in for a while. And Chris called me up and said to me, it's like, what are you doing? Why aren't you here? And I was like, oh, Chris, it's like, I don't know. I I was giving up, and I had given up, and I needed to take some time off. So it took about 3 months to, like, go visit family, and I had family in Houston, Texas, and I went to go see them. And he calls me up, and he was like, "You need to come back and get your life back together." And he was like, "You can stay with me. You can stay with me for like a month and a half. Get your stuff together, and get back in there, and um, be back here." And I go, seriously, you're gonna let me stay and, like, live with you for like about a month and a half to get, so I can get my own place and everything. And he did that for me. And I'll never forget that. And I'll always, that's how kind he was. It's like,
Wow.
never ever said anything unnice about anybody. And he was so kind. He opened up his home.
Hey, Time to Talk family. This is Tim Power, host of the podcast where amateurs talk about icons. To keep our show commercial free, we rely on your support. Many of you have chucked in just a couple of bucks, or sometimes more, which lets Time to Talk Australia pay its way. There's no obligation, of course. Keep listening to us no matter what. Liking and sharing our content is also a huge help. But if you do hear something that you like and you think you can support the show by throwing in a couple of bucks, head to patreon.com/Time to Talk Australia. The link is in the description of this podcast.
Hi Tim and Time to Talk listeners, this is Danny from Melbourne, and I'd just like to say your latest podcast made me very angry.
And as always, we want your voice memos. If you've heard something that you agree with, or possibly you're outraged, and let's be fair, many of you listen simply to be outraged, then take out your phone and record a voice memo. cap it at around the 2-minute mark, and then send it to me. I listen to all the voice memos that come through, and occasionally we include them in the show. Our email is timetotalkaustralia@outlook.com. Thanks for sharing, rating, contributing, and donating to this very little podcast from Down Under. I genuinely love our little Time to Talk family because lovers of pop are an endangered species. So why don't we go extinct together?
So that's all I have to say. Get off the airwaves, you're such an amateur.
Was he a happy person, would you say, Mason? Did he strike you as content?
Oh yeah, full of joy. Like he had a bright energy about him. Not once did you think that he was, depressed or sad. At least not when I knew him. And just always, he just wanted to be a part of something. It felt like he was, you know, whenever you did get the opportunity to be with him one on one, it was like his whole focus was on sharing his like knowledge and his experience.
He was married at the time when he passed away. Do you happen to know what that last 12 months was like for he and his family while he was going through this illness?
Well, like I said, it's like I only. That's a good question. Um, and should I be honest about it? Like I said, I didn't talk to him for about. It was about a year ago, and the first thing we discussed was about him being sick, and a lot of I would say a lot of the reasons why didn't speak to him more often was because I myself, learned that he was married or he had gotten married. And I didn't want to like cause any like confusion or I wanted him to be happy. So I was happy for him,
Had you
a
been in
lot.
a relationship with Chris for a period of time?
Um, well, how do I say this? We had a professional relationship and then we had a really close friendship.
But you had a sexual relationship with him, though.
Wow. You're really getting, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. So,
And there's an intimacy to that because I can tell from talking to you, Mason, that there's
mhm.
there's friendship, but it's a very intimate friendship that you had. And at the beginning of this conversation, when you mentioned you spoke to him a year ago, I
uh,
was curious if he had chosen to withdraw, but it sounds to me like maybe the truth is he was in a relationship and that was an intimate time to be sick. Maybe you didn't want to intrude on that period of time.
well, exactly. I didn't know where that situation was going, and I didn't want to like. And I had I was already in my own relationship, and I got married this year, so it's like there was that kind of worry too. That it's like if I had like contacted him and continued, because one thing about Chris is that he's a big flirt. I mean, you could see it in how his sister's a big flirt. Every time she talks to people on interviews, he was the same way. It's like there was no way of getting around his flirtation, and it makes you want to flirt, and it makes you feel sexy, and it makes you, and you get that type that adrenaline, the adrenaline rush of being wanted, and he made you feel wanted, and I didn't want to impose on his marriage, what was happening there. But I mean, I did speak to him, and it's like I told him, it's like, hey, I would call you more often, but I know that you're married, and I'm in a relationship too. So there that is, and I don't know what his relationship was with his husband. I don't know if they were still um, living together or not. I mean, I guess
Because
you
it's
could
not
look
very
on their
publicly
Facebook.
known, is it? The fact that he was married, at least in the fan community, and people might correct me, but it wasn't a particularly well known
Well,
fact.
not to be like to look into other people's windows, but I mean it's pretty obvious if to me if you're in a relationship with somebody and you guys live together, there should be photos of you guys together. There should be you guys living together. And he was living in Michigan. where's his husband living? That's all I'm
Mm.
saying.
Mm.
So,
Did you ever
um,
meet him at all?
no, that happened, I think in 2016. I had already moved. Oh, anyways, long story short, I moved out of Los Angeles in 2014 and ended up moving to the East Coast.
Mason, how did you learn that Chris had passed?
Well, I think like in my head, after talking to him, like I said, about a year ago, and he telling me that he was sick. When somebody tells you that they're sick, you're kind of feeling, oh, this is early, that you could treat it and you could get back. I mean, obviously, immediately when somebody says cancer, you think of Olivia Newton-John and how long she lived and how long she fought it. And you're thinking, oh, everybody's going to pass away eventually, but, you're only 60, something, and you're going to live until you're an old man, but uh, I guess when he told me, maybe he already had been battling it for a while. He didn't go into too much detail of it, but that was maybe a year and a half ago. So,
And was that on the
um,
phone, that last conversation, or face to face?
no, it was on the phone.
Did he
Go
tell
ahead.
you what type of cancer he was dealing with?
He did not. He just said he was sick. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
he was a chain smoker. I mean, I don't know. It's like it's not hard to like kind of put two and two together.
And when you were with Chris a lot, especially when you shared a unit, he smoked a lot, right?
Yes, that's a definite yes or no question. Yes, it was
Yeah.
like he had one ready to go, like on the nightstand. First thing in the morning, and with buttered sourdough toast.
That was his thing, was it, in the morning?
Yep, yeah, yeah. He had he always had toast and a cigarette, and we would go on his balcony, and he would smoke a cigarette, and I was like, I need some fresh air.
Oh, okay. So, yes, I have lived with a smoker before, and you're absolutely right. Sometimes, like, I might just open this window in the sub-zero temperatures. Thank you very much.
but
Was he a
like I
funny
was,
man? Was he a funny man?
he had a dry sense of humor, but very entertaining. He made me laugh, um, usually at the expense of others, because he would, uh, and then it wasn't the gossip. It's just, he would say funny things and make you like kind of giggle under your breath. Going back to like the moments that we did talk about his sister, there was this one time where, like I said, I was very, very nervous to like bring her up and talk about his sister.
Before
And
you go where you're going, Mason, why
yeah.
is that? Is it because you sensed that this was a wound, or was it because you didn't want to appear like, oh, I'm only spending time with you so I can talk to you about your famous sister? Why did you feel reluctant to talk about his sister?
Oh, it's definitely the latter. It's like you want to, yeah, I didn't want to be a fan. Just wanted to hang out with him and talk to him about his sister. I wanted to know his talent. I mean, to be fair, it's like I was an aspiring singer and I was a aspiring musician. So I was attracted to the fact that he had experience in that, and I wanted to take some of that experience and that knowledge and apply it to my own art. But that's okay because that's what artists do. They get inspired by each other and they create something magical. So I wanted some of that magic, and that's what I found alluring and attractive about him was because he was a plethora of knowledge and had so much experience and ones that I could like keynote and go, "Oh, I remember that, and let him elaborate on it. Like for example, like, he loved the musical White Christmas. And if you ever watch White Christmas, the musical, that Christmas movie, and you get to the number where they do a choreography, all the girls have their hair pulled back in that ponytail from Blonde Ambition.
Yeah.
And they're posing, and that's the that for me is like you see those girls doing the modern dance in those ponytails, and then you see the other actress dressed up as a showgirl doing her tap dancing. It's like that right there. That's Blonde Ambition. That's where
Mm.
they got the idea for that. And he's like, yeah, that's exactly where I got that idea from. That's where we grew up watching old Hollywood movies, and that's where, all that influenced that era of Madonna's career. So you don't want to talk about it because you don't want to think that you don't want him to think that, all I cared about was that. I mean, of course it's a part of that, but I definitely wanted to be his friend
Yeah.
and relate on a whole nother level because I mean he was a gay man. He was somebody of another generation of mine. And as a kid growing up, you need your heroes. You need your people to look up to and say, hey, this life isn't so terrible. Here are my mistakes. Here are the things that I succeeded in. And he was almost more than a friend, more than a lover. He was my mentor.
Did you learn about his passing in the same way that the rest of us did, through the rumour mill at first and then a media announcement, essentially?
Well, yeah, pretty much. Like I said, I hadn't talked to him for about a year, but I knew that he was sick. And I think I saw something on Instagram and I thought it was a rumor. And then I called him, no answer. I texted him, no answer. And so then I started thinking, the only reason I felt awful about it was because the same thing had happened with his stepmother, who he did feel was their real mother, even though his real mother had passed away when he was very young. But his stepmother Joan, she raised them, and he talked to her about her as my mom. And when she passed away, and that was all over the media. I was looking at his Facebook and I was looking at his Instagram, and I thought it was curious that he hadn't mentioned anything. Like he didn't say anything. I mean, it's really odd for me, you know, looking at somebody else's life and going, your mom passed away. That'd be like the first thing I mean, people do that about their pets. How come he hasn't said anything? And more curious is Madonna didn't say anything. So I thought, well,
And
maybe
what,
this
what,
isn't
what does
true.
that tell you, though, Mason? Does it tell you that he was particularly ill, do you think? Or what
I
does it
think
tell you?
so. I think so. I think that he hadn't posted anything on his Instagram or Facebook for it seemed like months. I think maybe I think the or yeah, I think the it's like in the summer and he's getting a haircut or something. There's a picture of him and he's not looking very well in that photo. But that was back in July or June or something like that. And then there's
And,
nothing.
of course, he lost his brother, too, not so long ago either, Anthony.
Right. I never met. I think I met one of his sisters, Melanie. I think she was there one time. I can't remember, but he had photos of his family all over his house, and it's
Mm.
like this is my nephew, this is my sister, my other sister, my mom, and I liked looking at photographs, and they were very and it was so humanizing for me, to see that you know. Uh, just random he had this photo of his feet, he thought everything was art, and it was he takes pictures of his feet, and I was like, okay, and it's a framed picture of his feet. It's kind of funny to me, but
Yeah.
uh yeah, I don't think he was well, and he probably that's what triggered me. I was like, maybe there's something is really going on here. Maybe he's, because I knew that he was sick. I knew he hadn't been posting, and I knew that when I called him, and when I called him, he would usually pick up the phone. No hesitation. No, he'd always return my calls. I would text message him. He would return the text. So there was none of that this last month. So, yeah, I think he was really not feeling. He was really, he was in the process of dying, and that's probably why.
Will you go to his funeral, Mason?
Probably not. I probably won't. Just because out of respect of I didn't I knew him and I had a friendship with him, and that was very personal and private, and it wasn't I wasn't a friend of the family. I definitely feel like funerals are for the family and people that are in his life currently. um I, I I would love to be a part of that and remember him and see how they'd celebrate him. But I would be just like another stranger coming into that very personal, very private. And you never know. Like personally, for me, when it's my time, I want it to be a celebration. I want it to, people to like almost like a wedding, where you're dancing and you're looking at photos or videos of that person's life, and that's how I see a funeral would should be. But I
Yeah.
don't know how their funeral is going to be, especially after his mother just passed, his stepmother just passed. I feel like they're probably emotionally worn out, and the last thing that they need is, a stranger to just show up at their, or strangers to show up at, a very private and personal thing. And I guess it would be different if I had gone to the vineyard and had met his family properly, and had maintained the friendship and relationship that I had when, um, you know, 10 years ago. But I don't have that now. So to answer your question is no, and it's out of
Yeah.
respect.
How will you remember Chris when you sit and take that time that you obviously need, because this has come as quite a shock to you? I can't imagine ringing somebody when you hear a rumor and not getting an answer or a text back. That must be like a feeling of panic is all I can think. How will you remember Chris?
Um, I will remember him with the image in my head of Chris Ciccone is him looking at me with his piercing blue eyes, taking a drag off his cigarette and winking. And that's how I pictured him. I always, when he would see me, he would do that. Like somebody be talking to him, nonsense or whatever, and he'd be in and out of that conversation. But when I would walk up, he'd like stop just to give me that wink. Then I knew, it's time to come and go on an adventure, and that's how I'd see him. And I think that's how I'll remember him. Yeah.
Mason, again, my condolences. And the fan community is in shock, sharing your grief as well. So thank you so much for talking to me, Mason.
Oh, thank you for reaching out. Yeah, it is. It's like a very, it's a sad day. And like I said, I really want people to remember Chris as a pioneer. I want them to remember him as a role model. He lived it. I mean, he lived through the worst of it. I mean, I can't imagine growing up a teenager in the 70s and being closeted to, having to like come to your own in the AIDS epidemic in the 80s, and then surviving that, and then, kind of not having your ordinary life because, a family member is the superstar goddess in a way. It's like, I mean, his life is, like I said, an amazing adventure. But
Yeah,
sad.
he led an extraordinary life, that's for sure. And what's interesting to me is that his contribution is actually really well known. Sometimes with superstars, the people behind the scenes aren't recognised, but Chris has been celebrated for the longest time, and rightly so, by the fan community for his contributions to Madonna's career. Huge contribution. In fact, you could argue that Madonna wouldn't have become Madonna without Chris. You can absolutely make that argument. So all our prayers are with Chris, wherever he may be, his family, and all the people that knew him. Mason, thanks for your time.
Oh, thank you. And I totally agree. Like, Chris is definitely, he got in. He's up there and his name's on the guest list in heaven. He got past St. Peter and he's like looking down at us, smoking a cigarette, going, you know, that was a good life. And I loved him, and that's all, that's how I feel. And it was a great, great, great friend and a good human being.